Refusing to participate in the upcoming family vacation stems from an unreasonable demand made by my sister for me to babysit her 3 children late at night. For years, I have been stuck in the role of helper and babysitter during family outings, a situation that led to my decision to move out of my parents' house last year. The burden of always watching my 3 lively nephews became too much. Last summer, my family took a vacation to the coast. I rode along with my parents, who kindly covered the cost of my hotel room. However, I quickly discovered that I had to share that room with my 3 energetic nephews, as my sister and her husband opted for a room of their own. I had been promised some free time during the vacation, which I looked forward to, but instead found myself constantly occupied with the kids. Whenever I voiced my complaints, I was reminded that my expenses were being paid for, which seemed to dismiss my feelings entirely. The family decided to do only one activity that I truly enjoyed, which was touring an art gallery. I love visiting art galleries whenever I go to the coast, but the kids found it dull and uninterested. As this year's vacation approaches, my parents have planned another beach trip for June and naturally assumed that I would join them as I did the year before. I outright refused, explaining that I would be driving my own car and covering my own hotel expenses, insisting that I need a room to myself. My parents were taken aback by my decision and tried to remind me of the financial costs involved in such a plan. I reassured them that I have a good job and a reliable car, and that I can comfortably afford the expenses. I reiterated my reasons for wanting to drive separately and pay for my own accommodations, emphasizing the need to enjoy this vacation as an adult, free from the responsibilities of babysitting like I had been the previous year. After my parents informed my sister of my decision, she called me, upset and demanding to know why I would choose to be off doing my own thing while she was left to manage her 3 boys. During the heated discussion, I raised my voice, explaining how I felt trapped last year, always roped into helping with the kids while my own interests were sidelined. I expressed my frustration at being treated like the villain simply for wanting to visit an art gallery. Now, my sister has chosen not to speak to me, and my parents continue to urge me to reconsider, hoping to maintain peace in the family. Despite their pressure, I remain firm in my decision. I can't help but wonder if I am in the wrong for not giving in. I know they will likely struggle without an extra hand to help with the kids, but I feel my own needs have to be prioritized this time. The situation escalated when my sister, who apparently keeps an eye on my online posts, found out about my decision. She became furious, especially when she saw that commenters were not siding with her. In her response, she expressed how challenging it is to parent triplets and insisted that I should help because I am young and single, claiming that she deserves a break. However, I stood my ground, maintaining that I am an adult who deserves to enjoy my vacation as well. After some time, my sister involved our parents again, anticipating that they would back her up. I was braced for a call from them, and when I finally spoke to them, they had seen my online post and were dismayed by the comments. They were upset with me for sharing our family issues, but I countered that if they had simply listened to me, I wouldn't have felt the need to reach out for support outside the family. I expressed my frustration with the keep the peace mentality that always seemed to put my sister's needs over mine. As a result of this confrontation, a significant turning point occurred. My parents ended up arguing with my sister. In summary, the family vacation was ultimately cancelled. Luckily, the hotel hadn't been booked yet. My parents were now upset with my sister, who in turn blamed me for ruining plans that involved her children. My nephews were understandably upset at the thought of missing out on the beach trip. Feeling the effects of the tension, my sister called me during lunch and made a dismissive comment about my life, suggesting that because I am single, I should have the time to help her. As evidence, I recorded that conversation to share with our parents. The ongoing conflict led to heated discussions about why I should be available for babysitting, yet I believe I have made my stance clear. In a recent update, my parents stated that they would no longer pressure me into watching my nephews and acknowledged that what happened last year was unfair to me. Presently, they are experiencing frustration directed toward my sister for her comments and demands. This situation continues to unfold, with my sister feeling wronged and my parents trying to navigate the fallout. My sister is really upset with me because I didn't agree to help her out with my 3 nephews. She thinks that since I don't have an active social life, I should be available to assist her. This situation has turned her into a victim in her own eyes. My brother-in-law is not getting involved in the drama and has chosen to spend most of his time at work to avoid the chaos. I want to say a big thank you to everyone who commented on my previous post. Your words made a huge difference in my day. Updating everyone on what's happened, my parents ended up apologizing to me, but my sister did not apologize at first. In fact, it took a while for her to even acknowledge any wrongdoing. About a week ago, I set up a throwaway account to ask whether I was the jerk in this situation, but the responses clearly showed that many felt I was in the right. I had too much to explain to fit into just that one post, so a friend suggested I share the full story here. By posting in, "Am I the jerk?" I unintentionally opened a can of worms within my family. Over time, my parents and my older sister had come to rely heavily on my help with babysitting my young triplet nephews. After living at home until I was 22 to save money while attending college, I found myself in a situation where my family assumed I had endless free time. I had been fortunate to receive a scholarship that covered most of my college expenses, and staying at home allowed me to keep my debts low while I worked part-time. However, once I graduated, it felt like my family believed I should just drop everything to assist them. During a family vacation, which I thought would be relaxing, I found myself babysitting my 3 nephews, who were 6 years old at the time. The experience was far from enjoyable. I even shared a hotel room with them, and they did not listen to me at all. On the first night, I had to call their mother twice, and instead of being seen as a responsible adult, I was made to feel like the bad guy for wanting to enjoy my vacation. It was frustrating because if the family didn't collectively enjoy an activity, it just wasn't happening, yet I had no say in that decision, even though I was part of the family. I expressed my frustrations to my parents after that awful vacation, and they recognized that they had made mistakes. After that experience, I decided it was time to move out of my parents' house. I did so before summer ended, which caught everyone off guard since I didn't give any prior notice. I managed to find a great job right after graduating, thanks to a successful internship. This new job allowed me to reduce my commute from 45 minutes to just 15 minutes, which made my life much easier. My sister was particularly upset about my move because it meant that I was no longer available for free babysitting on weekends. Despite my desire for independence, I still caved occasionally under the pressure, especially when offered pizza as a bribe. Just last month, my parents announced plans for another family vacation to the same coastal destination, and they wanted it to unfold in the same way as the previous trip. Recognizing the pattern, I realized that if I went with them and let them cover the hotel costs, I would likely end up in the same situation as last time. So, I simply mentioned that I would drive myself and pay for my own accommodations. It did not take long for chaos to ensue. My parents quickly understood that they could no longer control me like before, and they resorted to pleading for me to join them. My sister even attempted to pressure me into complying through various forms of manipulation. I stood my ground. After refusing to give in to my sister's demands, I made that post in, "Am I the jerk?" after facing several days of relentless harassment. Surprisingly, my sister found my post within an hour of it being published, which led to an explosive reaction from the family. Initially, many in the family sided with her. My sister called our parents, and they reached out to me shortly after. During the call, I could hear my parents reading my post, and I asked them if I had misrepresented anything. They tried to dodge my questions, saying my post was an exaggeration. However, I pointed out several details that confirmed how accurate my post really was. I urged my parents to look at the comments, which had already burst into the hundreds, if not thousands. I found myself refreshing the page repeatedly to see the growing engagement. I expressed my frustration about the family dynamic where I was forced to cater to my sister's needs to keep the peace. Ultimately, I told them I had to leave the conversation for now, which left my parents shocked at the outpouring of support I had received from strangers online. While my parents were truly shocked and appalled that so many people, possibly hundreds or even thousands, were commenting on my post within just a few hours, the situation escalated when I later informed them that the numbers had essentially doubled and were still increasing. This revelation only deepened their horror and concern about what was unfolding. As a result, they were compelled to thoroughly examine their own actions and decisions. During this period, my sister attempted to reach me while I was at work, but my phone was on silent mode until my lunch break. Therefore, all she could do was leave multiple messages and texts. Despite the challenge, she was determined and eventually managed to get through to me when I was eating my lunch. The core message of our conversation was that my social media post had seemingly driven my parents away from her, leading to a tense and angry argument between them. Consequently, my parents decided to cancel the entire family vacation they had planned. Later, they admitted that they had shifted the blame onto my sister out of embarrassment and a sense of guilt, fully acknowledging their own fault in the matter. They recognized that there was no excuse justifying the fact that they had made me their go-to babysitter, even though I was no longer living at home. They tried to soften their stance by mentioning that they never charged me rent while I was attending college, but I reminded them that children do not choose to be born and that I was doing my utmost to establish my own independence. I also pointed out that my father had received similar support from his parents, who allowed him to live at home without any charges while he was in college. This argument effectively ended any counterpoints they had left. When my sister finally reached me during my lunch break, I laid out the facts of the situation for her. This conversation revealed her true feelings. She suggested that I had no life of my own and that my weekends should be devoted to helping her because she was exhausted and unable to go out without her children unless someone was watching them. It was frustrating to note that she was a stay-at-home mother with a husband who earned a good salary. They lived in a nice house that they owned, not rented, and frankly, my nephews were not my responsibility. My sister had essentially imposed this role upon me and expected it to continue indefinitely. In a fit of anger, she hung up on me, but I had recorded the call. Later, I played the recording for my parents, who were furious at what they heard. This incident ignited a conflict between my sister and my parents. She dug in her heels, blamed me, and reiterated her belief that my life should revolve around hers. I told her that this was one of the most self-centered and entitled statements I had ever heard from her. It took several days for her husband to step in and urge her to apologize to me. I had never seen her so muted and submissive before. She was nearly in tears. Ultimately, she confessed that part of the reason I was always the go-to babysitter was that she lacked trust in strangers. It became clear that the issue was never about money. In fact, her husband had thought she was compensating me for my time spent taking care of their children after I moved out. However, she hadn't even offered me gas money. Instead, she would give me just enough cash to order pizza for both of us and the kids while pocketing the remainder. She had shortchanged me for months. When this revelation came to light during her half-hearted apology, her husband confronted her about it, and she was ultimately forced to pay me what she owed, using her own savings. It was evident she was not happy about this. Afterward, my brother-in-law also apologized to me for ignoring the situation and allowing my sister to take advantage of me. He promised that they would hire a proper babysitter moving forward. While this change might create a minor financial strain for them, my sister would finally regain her date nights. Then came the family meeting that took place a few days later at my parents' house. Everyone gathered together, and the issues were thoroughly discussed. Apologies were exchanged among us, and my parents reinstated the family vacation. I made it clear that I still intended to drive myself and cover my own hotel expenses. I even mentioned that I would stay in a completely different hotel if my sister attempted to revert back to her old ways of expecting me to babysit. She assured me that this would not happen. If I don't provide another update about the vacation in a month or so, it will mean everything went well. However, an unexpected twist occurred when my sister called me, demanding that I take down my posts about these events. My sister called me in a state of distress, demanding that I remove my posts from Reddit immediately. She was particularly upset to learn just how widely they had circulated. Having family members who are aware of your Reddit account can create complications. After I finished work yesterday, my sister reached out, asking if comments were still coming in. She expressed that she could not bear to view them herself because the feedback was overwhelmingly negative and hurtful toward her. I had to be honest with her and admitted that at least 10 new comments were being posted daily, and the majority echoed similar sentiments about her behavior. This realization made her break down in tears, and she insisted that I delete my posts. However, I stood my ground. I told her that she could cry all she wanted, but my posts were going to remain because they acted as a form of assurance for me. They were a reminder that she wouldn't be able to mistreat me as she had in the past. After all, she had previously expected my life to revolve around her needs. She didn't pay me the babysitting money she owed me and instead kept it for herself, while also making me the primary caretaker during our family vacation last year. This meant that I had little to no fun throughout the trip. It's no surprise that people have been critical of her behavior given how she treated me. When I mentioned that my posts had already spread to other websites, and that I had received requests for articles about my situation, she screamed in horror, shocked to hear that information before abruptly hanging up on me. Soon after, my parents called, pleading with me to take the posts down. I told them no and reiterated that I felt compelled to do this because they hadn't defended me. This situation could have been avoided entirely if they had told my sister to treat me like an equal instead of a servant. I am her brother, not her babysitter or handyman. I expressed to my parents my frustrations, stating they would likely feel the same if they were in my position. They agreed with my viewpoint but continued to plead for me to remove the posts. I informed them that I would keep posting more if they didn't begin to support me more when my sister came to them in tears. I emphasized that it was time for her to take responsibility for her own actions because their constant enabling was what led to this mess. I don't have children of my own, I have my life to live, a career to build, and potentially a relationship to pursue. I intend to focus on my own growth and happiness, and I will not allow myself to be held back any longer. My parents could either support me in this or continue to enable my sister, but I warned them that the latter would lead to negative consequences for them as well. The only way this would come to an end was if the drama ceased. I assured them that my posts would remain anonymous and that I had every right to express my valid frustrations. My mother ended up crying, and my father became uncharacteristically silent. I told them that tears wouldn't change my mind. They know what needs to happen for this to end. My sister needed to stop being enabled. After some time, my sister called again, filled with anger. She informed me that our parents had decided they weren't going to deal with her issues any longer and that she needed to figure things out by herself. Additionally, they advised her to treat me with more kindness. I couldn't help but picture her reaction, considering the absurdity of her being urged to be nice to me after everything. I even injected some sarcasm into our conversation, which only made her more upset. Later, I received a call from my brother-in-law who was clearly agitated with me for still posting and causing his wife to cry. I took the opportunity to explain my side of the story, and he agreed to have another discussion with my sister. I sincerely hope this argument comes to a resolution soon. However, our family vacation is still on schedule for late June. I have already booked my own room and arranged to take a day off work to ensure I can join the family on that Friday. Interestingly, my room will not be on the same floor as those of my parents, sister, brother-in-law, or nephews. In fact, it will be quite a distance from theirs. While we are at the coast, I plan to participate in activities of my choosing, separate from any family gatherings. I intend to explore art galleries, indulge in local cuisine, and finally enjoy some well-deserved leisure time without any obligations weighing me down. Update: after the family vacation, while it is now behind us, the developments during that time included both positive and negative aspects. My experiences have definitely affected my perspective going forward. The family vacation had finally come to an end, and with it came a mix of experiences that were both positive and negative. One of the good aspects was that my parents did not support my sister's attempts to make me babysit her children during our trip. She certainly tried to push that responsibility onto me, but fortunately, my parents were not having it this time. On the downside, my sister did make an effort to figure out which hotel room I was staying in, but her plan backfired and resulted in her getting into trouble with her husband. Before the trip, I had been proactive. I contacted the hotel and specifically instructed them not to share any of my information with anyone who might inquire, unless it was the police in a serious situation. The hotel staff assured me over the phone that my privacy would be respected. On the day of the vacation, I woke up early and left the house before the rest of the family. Knowing my relatives typically took a long time to gather themselves, I set out at 9 a.m., leaving them behind. Although official check-in was scheduled for 1 p.m., I wanted to make sure I beat them there. My parents had planned a family brunch on the way, but since they hadn't informed me of this plan, it was cancelled in favor of fast food, just as I had intended. After a 3-hour drive, I arrived at the hotel too early for check-in. At the front desk, I explained that I needed to ensure my sister or parents wouldn't disclose my information. The staff claimed they would not do that, but I expressed my doubts based on past experiences. I wanted to make sure that when my mother and sister, along with 3 potentially whiny boys, arrived, they would not be able to manipulate the front desk staff into giving them my room information. The desk clerks awkwardly promised that only I would have access to my room. Feeling a bit hungry, I decided to go out and grab something to eat. I returned over an hour later to find my parents' car along with my sister's SUV parked outside. Making sure the lobby was clear, I approached the desk to check in and asked the clerk if my family had inquired about my whereabouts. They had, but the clerk informed me that my sister had tried to extract information, only to be silenced by her husband. After checking in, I went to my room and called my parents. I deliberately did not mention that I was aware of their previous attempts to find out where I was, and they conveniently avoided bringing it up as well. Later, we all gathered as a family to explore the area together. At one point, my sister asked if I could watch her kids for just a moment. I flatly refused, fully aware of her intentions to leave me with the children while she disappeared for an extended period. I confronted her directly, and her husband echoed my sentiments, telling her to stop trying to place that burden on me. In response, my sister began to cry, claiming she needed a break. Her husband, though tired himself, did not complain. I caught my mother giving me a disapproving look, so I approached her and firmly stated that if she even considered asking me to babysit, I would walk away from the family vacation altogether. I was adamant that it was not my responsibility. This declaration caused my mother to break down as well, repeating the words, "You're right," over and over again. I recognized this tactic all too well. It was her way of trying to evoke sympathy from me. I responded by affirming that I was right and advised her to let it go before walking away. For the remainder of the day, neither my mother nor sister attempted to burden me again. When we returned to the hotel after dinner, my family crowded the elevator. However, I chose not to join them. When they asked why, I replied that I would wait for the next one. My sister shot me a glare, fully aware of my intent to distance myself. I sat in the lobby for a while, watching videos on my phone for about 15 minutes before finally taking the elevator up. I had booked a room on a different floor, which placed me at the far end of the hotel. I enjoyed a peaceful night without my family's distractions. The following morning, we all went out for breakfast, but I ensured they left first. I was the last one to emerge, just as I had been the night before. Breakfast went smoothly, and afterward, I sent out a family group text to catch everyone up. I made it clear that I was going to spend the day doing my own thing. My mother suggested plans to visit the aquarium and a couple of other attractions. I agreed to meet them for those outings but emphasized that the rest of the day was mine until family dinner. They accepted this arrangement and the day unfolded without any major issues. However, later that evening, while I was at the hotel, my sister confronted me as I was leaving my room. It seemed she had been watching the hallway, looking for me. I had gone back to my room to relax for a while before dinner because I was feeling tired from all the walking. When I stepped out again to join the family for dinner, my sister tried to corner me. She claimed I was ruining the family vacation for her because, in her eyes, it felt no different from our usual home life since she had to look after her kids. I rejected her accusation outright, pointing out that our parents were helping her significantly. I was fed up with being her scapegoat and told her to leave me alone and take charge of her own life. As I walked away, she yelled after me, trying to get my attention. I told her I didn't care and continued on my way to dinner. When I reached the elevator, there was an uncomfortable silence between us. I didn't hold back when I informed my parents and brother-in-law that my sister had been following me. This led to her being reprimanded like a child, and instead of owning up to her actions, she opted for a pity party. I advised her to stop playing the victim and to mature, emphasizing that the days when she could impose her will on me were over. Afterward, I stepped outside to my car, arriving at the restaurant ahead of the others. When everyone else showed up, I noticed my sister looked downcast, but nobody mentioned what had happened earlier, which suited me just fine. Throughout dinner, she intentionally avoided making eye contact with me. I also made it clear to everyone that unless it was an emergency, I didn't want anyone knocking on my door since I had a "do not disturb" sign for a reason. On the final day of our vacation, things went smoothly. Neither my sister nor my mother bothered me at all. They seemed to have accepted my boundaries. During the trip, I did spend some time playing with my nephews, proving I wasn't a complete jerk. I was still the fun uncle but not the babysitter uncle. The kids seemed happy just to have someone to play with. I even bought each of them a little bag of crystals and polished stones as souvenirs to take home. There was some minor drama between my sister and her husband, but it was just small disagreements that I chose to ignore. Overall, I considered the vacation a success because it finally made it clear to my mother and sister that the old dynamics of our relationship were no longer applicable. They realized I have my own life to live. After the trip, an update emerged. My mother and sister had seen my previous post online, and their reaction was far from calm. They clearly don't know when to just let things be. I had warned them that if they didn't stop their behavior, I would go back to posting about it online, and that is exactly what I did. My sister had been monitoring my social media account closely, anticipating my next move. When she saw what I wrote, she was upset and called me, crying that I had made her appear to be a bad mother. In response, I told her that if the glass slipper fits, then she should accept it. She argued with me, attempting to find something in my post that was untrue, but every detail was accurate. Frustrated, she resorted to calling our mother for help. Soon after, my mother showed up at my door, demanding that I delete all the posts. I refused. In that moment, I had the upper hand, and I ended up making her leave my place in tears. Later, I had a conversation with my parents over the phone, where I bluntly expressed that their enabling behavior towards my sister had contributed to the dysfunctional family dynamic we had. I made it clear that I would never revert to how things had been in the past. If they held any hope for our family to return to its previous state, I was going to extinguish that hope completely. My parents had a serious talk with my sister. They told her, for the love of God, to stop blaming me for everything and to just leave me alone. They explained that they couldn't handle the stress of my sister's constant needling and accusations anymore. My sister was having a pity party, thinking that no one loved her, which seemed to make the situation worse. My parents had to pull her back down to reality and help her see that this behavior was not okay. Meanwhile, I was concerned about my brother-in-law. He hadn't called in a while, and it seemed like he was trying to stay neutral in all of this. I worried that this silence might not be good for his marriage or for my relationship with him. Out of respect for him, I felt sorry for what he was going through, but I also had to admit that my sister had pushed me too far this time. My parents are now insisting that my sister seek counseling. They believe that she cannot balance being a mom while holding on to her old lifestyle. They keep saying she needs to toughen up and face the reality of her situation. I really hope this is the last time I have to write about this. To my sister, I want to say that if you don't stop expecting me to be your personal babysitter, watchdog, or whatever else you think I should be, then we cannot hang out anymore. If you keep acting like the world is against you because you cannot control me, we will not be able to maintain a relationship. I would like for us to move past this, but you need to be willing to do the same. Please don't give me another reason to write about you again. I'm going to focus only on my own experiences and how I am treated. Treat me like a decent human being, and this situation will be resolved. In an update, my parents and I had a long conversation in which they apologized for everything that happened. For now, we have decided that it's best for me to keep my distance until Thanksgiving. Last night, I also had a man-to-man talk with my brother-in-law over some cold beers. He expressed that my sister needs to get counseling, or they might end up separating. They are currently looking for a counselor for her. He also told me that despite how my sister acts at home, she can be a loving and caring wife. However, he mentioned that my sister has struggled with some resentment for a long time because we are nearly a decade apart in age, and she once enjoyed being the only child. She has agreed that counseling is necessary, and they will start as soon as they find someone suitable. Additionally, they have arranged for a qualified babysitter to take care of my nephews. My brother-in-law admitted that he was also upset with me for not reaching out sooner, but we agreed that this whole situation was bad and needed to end. We are going to let it rest for now and not bring it up again. On a positive note, these posts have led me to someone special. The girl I like had a feeling I was the one writing them and was just waiting for me to say something. We will be going on our first date tonight, so I want to thank everyone for their support. It has really meant a lot to me during this tough time.